So we're going to start on the angle slider now. The angle slider is a metric drawing. So instead of picking your part drawing right here like we normally do if it's English units, we're now going to click on New and make sure that we establish and kind of go through these little templates here. So hit that little tree and go to Metric to where we see the standard millimeter. So you want to make sure it says millimeter IPT file. So we're going to start there. This one, the approach we're going to start with the angle slider is that this is a block, and we're going to cut away the material that we don't want. So that's kind of like a subtractive method. If you were manufacturing that, you would be doing subtractive manufacturing because you would start with a block and you would cut away what you don't want. So I'm going to start with the 250 millimeter for the length of it, and the height is 120. Oops, I typed 150, so let me fix that. So just remember, edit in dimensions, you just double click on the dimension and you can fix that. So I'm going to extrude this back into or forward. It doesn't make a difference which for this because we're right at the beginning. So it's 175. So I'm going to start with that part right there. So I'm going to start with looking at this from the front view. I'm going to knock out my two angles first. So I'm going to start the sketch on the front view. And I'm going to draw a line just kind of randomly up here. I don't want to see that green dot. That green dot means it's picking to the midpoint, and that's going to constrain it. So I just either need to go, to the left or right of that dot. So I just want to make sure I'm not picking any of those points. So I'm going to continue with a triangle around the top there. I'm going to locate the dimension that I was given, and that is 90. So I've got 90 millimeters there, and then I have the angle. So when you use your dimension, you have to pick two lines in order to pick an angle dimension. Let's try that again. Pick that line and that one, and oh, something's wrong there. I'm gonna go back and erase this. I don't know if I picked to a point there, so I'm just gonna redo that. So I'm gonna pick this line. I'll make sure I come down a little bit lower and pick that, just to make sure that I don't have a constraint like a midpoint or something like that. So yeah, I must have picked the midpoint of that line. So that gives me 30 degrees. And now I'm ready to go ahead and cut that triangle out of that profile of that part. I'm going to hit F6 right now. F6 is the default home location, so I want to see that as it's cut. So I'm going to make sure the first thing I do, there's only one profile that has been selected, so it has naturally selected that there. I want to switch that to cut, and I want it to go through all, so I make sure I click on through all and hit OK, and it cuts that. So looking at it from the front, I want to go directly to the bottom, and I want to create the second angle that's there. So I'm going to start a sketch here, and I'm going to draw a line over from this edge over to this edge, making sure I'm not picking a green dot. And this time I'm gonna show you these yellow lines that are popping up. These are project geometry. That means that geometry is projecting to that sketch plane based on the geometry that's back behind it. So instead of drawing these extra lines, I'm going to use those yellow lines as part of my drawing, and I don't have to go through and pick those or redraw those lines because they're already defined by the previous geometry. So I'm going to click on that dimension there and put 75 degrees, 75 millimeters. I'm going to hit the check button, and then I'm going to put the angle from here to here is 30 degrees. So I'm going to set that as 30, finish the sketch, and then I want to go ahead and extrude that surface. So back to the F6 button to rotate that around. I'm going to go into the cut and making sure it's going through all. I will cut all of that. Some people notice that little funky angle that happens right here. That's just cutting, and when you cut that, you'll notice that that angle does appear right there. So that's not something you have to lay out. It's just because, you know, you've got two angles, which is like a compound angle, and that angle just appears. So you don't have to physically draw that out. So from here, I'm going to let you, we're going to finish this part up by just sketching all of the other features on the surface. So I'm going to pick this right here. I'm going to draw my little rectangle to kind of lay out that piece. So put a dimension on that. It's 20 by 30. And it's 35 off the base. So that's going to locate it, and that's going to put that there. And then I have a circle that's also on here, so that hole goes all the way through. So we'll specify the X and Y location. So this dimension is 50 from the edge, 25 from the bottom, and the diameter for this part is 20. So once I finish those two things, I can go to extrude and I can pick those two profiles. And I want to cut and I want to go through all, so I'm going to cut both of those. And that's going to finish that up. The next sketch is going to be on the top. I want to make sure that I draw a circle over here on the side. I'm not going to line it up with any of those lines. That will constrain it. So I don't know where it's really located, so I don't want to pick on any of those, any of that geometry that pops up. So this is located 40, 25 from the edge, and the diameter is also 20. So making those items, finish that sketch, extrude that, make sure you switch into cut, through all, and that one is done. And now to finish this part up, I'm going to flip it around to the back. Okay, I'm going to lay out another sketch on the back surface. This time I'm going to use the rectangle commands just to save me from having to draw 4 lines. The rectangle command just makes it happen so much faster. So this dimension is 75. The height of it is 25, and it's located 50 from the edge. Alright, so finish that sketch, extrude. So hitting the F6 button just to see what's going on here. I want to cut and I want it to go through all. So once it comes through there, I don't even know the length of that. All I know that is that I want it to go through all of the material, and that is the finish of the angle slider. So make sure you save that and upload it to your project or to your assignment.